Oh, happy day to my 7th grade students. Today we are going to be talking about writing proportions, and we have been doing this for a while now. You have to remember what the major thing to do here is be consistent. So always remember to be consistent. Okay? What will you learn? Well, you will learn to write proportions. Again, it says be consistent, and how to solve them by using cross products. This is actually lesson 5.4 as well as 5.3. Okay? So it says a recipe calls for 1.5 cups flour for 1 cake. Another recipe calls for 6 cups flour. How many cakes can this make? Well, what we want to do is we want to notice the ratio that they give us right here. And this is where you want to be consistent. You put 1.5 cups flour, I'm going to put just an F for flour, over 1 cake. Okay, if it's flour over cake, remember it has to equal flour over cake. And if you look at this, the question, how you define your variable, is C is going to equal the number of cakes. Do you have to do that in these problems? No. Sorry about that. And then it also gives you 6 cups of flour. So we're going to put the 6 up there with the cups of flour, and we're going to put C down here. Okay? How do we solve a proportion? We cross multiply. So we get 1.5 C equals 6. Put your wall up, divide both sides by 1.5. 1.5. And remember, the top number goes underneath. We're dividing by 1.5. We can't do that. We have to shift the decimal one place, which means that decimal goes over, and it's really 60. So it's 60 divided by 15, which is going to be 4 perfectly. So C is going to be 4 cakes. Did you see how we were consistent? The next problem says, a test is worth 70 points. How many points do I need to earn to get 90%? How many points do I need to earn to get 90%? This is where we're going to set up another type of proportion that goes along with story problems. It's called part over the total equals percent over 100. And in this percent proportion, one of the 3 of these is going to be missing. One of those 3 will be missing. So it says a test is worth 70 points. We want to know, is that part or is that the total? That has to go along with the total because it's only worth 70 points. How many points do I need to get to earn 90%? We want to get a 90 out of 100. So we're going to put 90 over 100 equals part. We don't know what our part is. I'm going to call it X over the total points is 70. How do we solve it? We cross multiply. Here you get 100x equals 7 times 9 is 63, and put those 2 zeros on the end. Divide both of them by 100. And I have to earn, those cancel out, those cancel out. I have to earn 63 points on that test to get a 90%. I want you guys to do number 3. Example 4, it says, in an orchestra, there are 3 violin players for every cellist. Right there, you're going to see, that there is a ratio. In an orchestra, an orchestra has 10 cellists. How many violin players are there? We want to know how many violin players are there. So we're going to set this 3 for every 3 violinists for every cellist. Put 3, and I know that's violin, over every 1, that's 1 cellist. It has to equal, well, if it's a violin over cellist, it has to be violin over cellist. And they tell me that there are 10 cellists, so I'm going to put that down in the denominator. We want to know how many violin players there are, so I'm going to put that as a V for violin players. How do we solve it? We cross multiply. 1 times V is equal to 30. Isn't 1v the same as v? What property is it that says 1v is the same as v? You're right, it's the identity. Okay, so that means v equals 30, and there are 30 violin players. Same thing works with example 5. It says on a map, 1/2 of an inch equals 40 miles. How many miles will I drive if I measure 2.5 inches? Okay, I want to know how many miles. Okay, look at this. It says 1/2 of an inch. So we're going to write this as a fraction, 1/2 an inch over 40 miles. What I want you to do first on this problem, see how this is a fraction? Okay, so what I want you guys to do is to get rid of half, we want to double this because isn't 2 halves a whole? So multiply that by 2 and multiply that by 2. And that will give me 1 inch is going to equal 80 miles. So that's the fraction we're going to use. And since it's inches over miles, to be consistent, I have to put inches over miles. Okay? It says how many miles will I drive? So I'm going to put M down here for miles. And it told me 2.5 inches. I'm going to put 2.5 in there for inches. How do we solve this? Cross multiply. So 1M is the same as M, so we're going to take M, and it's going to equal 2.5 times 80. There's a 0, 40. Oops, that's a 0. Carry the 4. Okay, put the decimal point in there, one place, you get 200 miles. Okay, as long as you're consistent, these should work out. All right, example 6, it says write a proportion from the table. As long as you are consistent, if I see over here points and shots for game 1, I'm going to put 12 points for game 1 over 14 shots. That has to equal points over shots. Well, look at, we know 18 is points, and we put it over W, which is shots. How do we solve this? Cross multiply. Here we get 12W equals, and I got to take 14 times 18, which is 252. We're going to put our wall up, divide both sides by 12. And we're going to get the answer of 21. So W is going to be 21 shots. Don't forget to put your label on these too. Okay, I want you guys to do number 7 as well. And down here, we're just going to get practice solving proportions. How do we solve a proportion? Cross multiply. Okay? So what we're going to do, 4 times M, we know it's a proportion because they're equal, equals 20. Divide both sides by 4, and we get M equals 5. I want you to try number 9 and number 10. Okay? Johnny, thank you for this joke. It says, what do you call a magic owl? What do you call a magic owl? Houdini. Hoo-hoo. Houdini, get it? Oh, thank you, Johnny.